Your mother is alive. She works as a cleaner." And the millionaire froze upon hearing it. The pen slipped from Julian Harrison's fingers as those words echoed through the boardroom. The $50 million contract was right there, on the mahogany table, waiting only for his signature to seal the biggest deal of his life. 20 years building his business empire, 20 years proving to the world that an orphan boy could make it. And now, at the most crucial moment, everything was crumbling with a sentence shouted by an unknown teenager. "Your mother is alive. She works as a cleaner in the building next door." The boy in the green shirt kept pointing at Julian, his eyes burning with urgency. "I saw her crying yesterday when your picture appeared in the newspaper." The silence that followed was deafening. The executives from the Japanese conglomerate Julian was about to acquire exchanged confused glances. His wife, Catherine, gripped his hand tightly, feeling it tremble. Julian couldn't breathe properly. For 20 years he had believed that Susan Harrison had passed from this life when he was just 16, leaving him completely alone in the world. "Get out of here. How did you get in?" Julian stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. "Security!" But the boy wasn't intimidated. "My name is Tyler. My mother works in cleaning here. She knows your mother. They talk about you every night. Mrs. Susan keeps all the magazines you appear in." Catherine let go of her husband's hand, bringing her own to her chest. In 15 years of marriage, Julian had never shared details about losing his mother. He always just said she wasn't here anymore, and changed the subject. Now she was beginning to understand why. "That's impossible." Julian tried to keep his voice steady, but his legs were buckling. "My mother, she's been gone a long time." "You're confused, boy." Tyler shook his head vehemently. "No, sir. She has the same last name that's on the contract there. Susan Harrison. And she always talks about the son who became a businessman. She's proud, but she cries a lot." The Japanese men began whispering among themselves in their language. Julian's lawyer tried to calm things down, but the situation was spiraling out of control. Catherine approached the boy, ignoring her husband's protests. "What does she look like? Describe her to me." Her voice was soft but determined. "Grey hair, always tied up, wears a blue uniform, has a small scar on her forehead and—" Tyler hesitated for a moment. "She always fidgets with a bracelet that she hides under her glove." Julian felt his legs give way. The bracelet. He had given that cheap bracelet to his mother on her 15th birthday, bought with his first part-time paycheck. She had cried with emotion, saying it was the most beautiful gift she had ever received. But that was impossible. He himself had seen— "No!" Julian shouted, making everyone jump. "Enough! Everyone out! The meeting is cancelled!" Chaos erupted in the room. The Japanese men stood up indignantly. The lawyer tried to salvage the situation. Catherine questioned her husband's actions. But Tyler remained there, steady as a rock. "Mr. Julian, she works in the Blue Tower right next door. Every day from 6 in the evening until 2 in the morning. If you want, I can take you there tonight." "I said get out!" Julian grabbed the boy by the arm, but Catherine intervened. "Julian, stop! Don't touch him!" She placed herself between the two. "Tyler, thank you for coming here. That was very brave of you." The boy nodded and left the room, but turned one last time. "She loves you very much, Mr. Julian. Even after everything, she always says you are the pride of her life." When they were alone, Catherine faced her husband. He was pale, sweating, staring fixedly at the unfinished contract. "Julian, explain to me what is happening here." "There's nothing to explain." "That boy is confused. My mother is— She hasn't been with us for 20 years. You never told me how she passed." "Because it's too painful." Catherine approached him, touching his face. "Darling, if there's a chance, however small, that your mother is alive—" "She's not." Julian pulled away from her. "I saw it with my own eyes. I was there when—" He stopped abruptly, realizing he was about to reveal something he had buried for 2 decades. Catherine waited, but he didn't continue. Instead, he left the room, leaving behind the contract that represented years of work and dreams. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. He stayed on the balcony of his Upper East Side apartment, looking at the commercial towers in the distance. Could it be possible? How could he have been so wrong? He remembered clearly that terrible day, when he was 16, when he came home and found— "What are you thinking about?" Catherine approached from behind, offering a cup of tea. "Nothing important. Julian, in 15 years of marriage, you have never lied to me. Don't start now." He sighed deeply. "When I was 16, I had a terrible fight with my mother. I said horrible things, that she was a failure, that I was ashamed to be her son, that I couldn't stand living in that situation anymore." Catherine held her breath. It was the first time Julian had spoken about it. "I left home that night and stayed at a friend's house for 3 days. When I came back, the house was empty. The neighbors said she had left, that she couldn't take it anymore. She left only a note saying I would be better off without her." "And you never looked for her?" "I looked for months. But she had vanished completely. Years later, a neighbor told me he had heard that she hadn't been able to cope. I assumed that she had taken her own life." Julian nodded, the tears finally escaping. "It was my fault, Catherine. The last words I said to her were full of hate. I killed her with my cruelty." Catherine hugged him tightly. She finally understood why her husband always kept an emotional distance from everyone, why he worked obsessively, why he always seemed to be proving something to himself. What if the boy is right? What if she is alive and you have suffered all these years for no reason? I can't feed that hope. It would be too cruel to find out it's not her. But it would also be cruel not to check. The next morning, Julian was at the office earlier than usual. He tried to focus on work, but the boy's words echoed in his mind. Around 10 o'clock, Tyler appeared at the reception, asking to speak with him. "Mr. Julian, I brought this." The boy held out a faded photograph. "My mother took it secretly last month." In the photo, a woman in a blue uniform was holding a newspaper open to the business page, where there was an article about Julian. The quality was poor, taken from a distance, but it was undeniable. Those were the eyes of Susan Harrison. Julian sat down heavily. "How? Where did you get this?" "My mother knew I was planning to talk to you. She tried to convince me not to do it, said that Mrs. Susan didn't want to be a bother. But I couldn't stay quiet seeing her suffer so much. She really talks about me." Tyler nodded. "Every day, sir. She tells my mother what you were like when you were little. How smart you were, how you liked to build things with scrap. She says she always knew you would be someone important." Julian closed his eyes. He remembered the scrap constructions in the backyard. Little towers made of shoeboxes and cans. His mother always encouraged him, saying that one day he would build real towers. Can I ask why you were separated?" The question was innocent, but it cut Julian like a blade. "I was a terrible son. I said things I should never have said. She left because of me." "But Mrs. Susan doesn't talk like that. She says you were just a frightened boy trying to deal with problems too big for your age. She always blames herself for not knowing how to help." Julian looked at Tyler with surprise. "She blames herself?" "Yes, sir. She says she failed as a mother, that she didn't know how to give you what you needed, that if she had been a better mother, you wouldn't have fought." The words fell like bombs on Julian's conscience. For 20 years he had assumed his mother had left because he was a terrible son. He never considered that she might feel like an inadequate mother. "Where exactly does she work?" "At the Liberty Tower, sir. It's that blue one over there." Tyler pointed out the window. "She starts at 6 in the evening on the 20th floor." Julian looked at his watch. It was almost 11 in the morning. He had 7 hours to decide if he would have the courage to face the past. Catherine arrived at the office at lunchtime and found her husband motionless, staring out the window. "Did the boy come back?" "He came back. He brought a photo." Julian showed the picture to his wife. Catherine held the paper carefully, studying the woman's face. "Julian, she has your eyes." "I know. What are you going to do?" "I don't know. How can I approach her after 20 years? How can I explain that I abandoned her when she needed me most?" Catherine sat down beside him. "And how can you not try, Julian, if there's a chance for reconciliation, for you to forgive each other? What if she hates me? What if she doesn't want to see me? What if she's been waiting for this for 20 years? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, Please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. In the afternoon, Julian cancelled all his meetings. He paced back and forth in his office, constantly looking at the blue tower across the street. Catherine tried to work, but she was equally nervous. "Maybe we should go together," she suggested. "No, this is something I need to do alone, if it's really her." At 5:30 in the evening, Julian was in the lobby of the Liberty Tower. The security guard recognized him immediately. After all, he was a well-known figure in the business district. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harrison. How can I help you?" "I would like to speak with one of the cleaning staff, Susan Harrison." The guard checked a clipboard. "Mrs. Susan hasn't arrived yet. She starts at 6, but I can call her when she arrives if you'd like." "No." Julian hurried. "Actually, I'd prefer to observe first, before approaching." The guard seemed confused, but didn't question it. Julian positioned himself discreetly near the elevators, pretending to fiddle with his phone while he waited. 6 o'clock came, 6:15, 6:30. Julian was beginning to think she wouldn't come when the revolving door moved and a woman in a blue uniform hurried in. Time stopped. It was her. 20 years older, hair grey where it was once brown, wrinkles marking a face he knew by heart. But it was undeniably Susan Harrison, his mother. She headed for the elevators carrying a bucket and cleaning supplies. Julian hid behind a column, his heart pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. When the elevator doors closed, taking her up, he ran to the stairs. He climbed 20 floors in a state of panic, stopping at every landing to catch his breath. When he reached the 20th floor, he opened the stairwell door just a crack and peered out. There she was, cleaning the windows of an empty office. Her movements were tired but meticulous. She was humming softly a song Julian recognized. It was the same lullaby she used to sing when he was little and had nightmares. Julian observed for long minutes, memories flooding his mind. Her hands, which now held a cleaning cloth, had once tended to his wounds. Those arms that carried heavy products had hugged him every night. That voice, which murmured the song, had told him bedtime stories. At one point, Susan stopped to rest. She took off her gloves and Julian saw the bracelet. There it was, faded and scratched, but still on her wrist. His mother had kept that cheap gift all these years. Susan opened her purse and took out a small object. It was a newspaper clipping, the same article Tyler had shown in the photo. She smoothed the paper carefully and kissed Julian's image gently before putting it away. That was when Julian could no longer hold back the tears. He slid down the wall to sit on the hallway floor, sobbing silently. His mother was alive. She hadn't abandoned him. She still loved him. But how to explain 20 years of absence? How to say he had looked for her, but gave up? How to confess he had assumed the worst without being sure? How to ask forgiveness for 2 lost decades? Julian went down the stairs in a state of shock. He passed through the lobby like a ghost and went out to the street. Catherine was waiting for him in the car, anxious. "Was it her?" Julian just nodded, unable to form words. "What happened? Did you talk to her?" "I couldn't." "Catherine? She still wears the bracelet I gave her as a teenager. She carries a newspaper clipping with me in her purse." Catherine held her husband's hand. "That means she forgave you a long time ago, Julian. Or it means she's still waiting for me to apologize." That night, Julian barely touched his dinner. He stayed on the balcony again, looking at the building where his mother worked. The lights turned on and off floor by floor as she completed her routine. "You need to talk to her," Catherine said, joining him. "Tomorrow. I need time to think about what to say." "Julian, some things don't need elaborate words. Sometimes a simple, sincere 'forgive me' is enough." But Julian didn't sleep that night, and the next night he also couldn't gather the courage. Tyler appeared at the office on the 3rd day. "Mr. Julian, my mother said that Mrs. Susan has been sadder lately. She thinks someone might have told her about our conversation." Julian's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "Mrs. Susan keeps looking at this building during work. Yesterday she asked my mother if it was true that a man had asked about her." Julian realized his observation had been noticed. His mother knew he was nearby but hadn't approached. Perhaps she was also afraid of the reunion. "Tyler, can you give her a message?" The boy nodded eagerly. "Tell her. Tell her I would like to talk with her, but only if she wants to. If she prefers I don't bother, I will respect that." Tyler smiled. "I'll talk to her today, sir." The day dragged on. Julian couldn't concentrate on anything. Every meeting seemed endless, every phone call an irritation. At 5 in the afternoon, Tyler returned. "So?" Julian didn't even let the boy sit down. "She cried, Mr. Julian, cried a lot, but she said yes, she would like to talk with you." The relief Julian felt was almost physical. "Where? When?" She suggested the little coffee house on the corner. "Tomorrow noon. She'll take time off from work." That night, Julian finally managed to eat something. Catherine was visibly relieved to see him more animated, though still nervous. "What will you say to her?" "The truth. Everything. How I regret it. How I looked for her. How I assumed the worst. How I built my life trying to prove I didn't need anyone, when in truth I only wanted to prove I was worthy of her love." Catherine kissed her husband's forehead. "She already knows that, dear. A mother always knows." On the morning of the meeting, Julian changed his clothes 3 times. He didn't want to appear overly formal, but he also didn't want to make a bad impression. Catherine helped him choose something casual, yet elegant. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No, but can you stay nearby, in case I need you?" Catherine agreed. They left together, but she would wait in a nearby diner while Julian went to the coffee house. The corner coffee house was a simple establishment, mostly frequented by office workers from the area. Julian arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table in the back from where he could see the entrance but wasn't too exposed. Noon came and went. 12:05, 12:10. Julian began to worry, thinking she had changed her mind. Then the door opened, and there she was. Susan Harrison entered hesitantly, looking around. She wasn't wearing her work uniform. She had on a simple navy blue dress, her hair loose on her shoulders. When her eyes met Julian's, she stopped completely. For long seconds, they just looked at each other. 20 years of separation, of pain, of longing, condensed in that moment. Julian slowly stood up, and Susan began to approach. "My son," she whispered when she reached the table. "Mom," he replied, his voice breaking. They didn't embrace immediately. They sat facing each other, hands trembling, eyes filled with tears. You've grown so much," Susan said, trying to smile through the tears. "You've changed too, but I would recognize you anywhere." An uncomfortable silence settled in. There was so much to say that neither knew where to begin. "I need to apologize," Julian finally spoke. "For everything. For the horrible things I said. For running away. For not coming back. For assuming. For thinking that you had—" "Shh," Susan interrupted, reaching her hand across the table. "I need to ask for forgiveness too. For not knowing how to help you back then. For letting you carry so much weight on your shoulders. For leaving without properly explaining." Julian held his mother's hand. It was rougher now, marked by years of hard work, but it still had the same gentle touch he remembered. "Mom, why did you leave? I looked everywhere." Susan sighed deeply. "Because I thought it would be better for you. You were 16 and already working to help at home. You said that day you were ashamed of me, that I was a burden. I thought it really would be better if I disappeared from your life. I didn't mean it. I was frustrated, angry at the situation, but I never wanted you to leave. I know that now, but at the time I was so lost. Your father had just left us. I was unemployed. The bills were piling up. When you said those things, I felt like the worst mother in the world." Julian squeezed her hand tighter. "You are the best mother in the world. You always were. I was the ungrateful son." "Don't say that. You were just a boy trying to deal with adult problems." A waitress approached, but Julian politely sent her away. They needed privacy for this conversation. "Mom, all these years I thought that a neighbor told me that you hadn't been able to handle the situation." Susan immediately understood what he was implying. "Oh, my son. I would never do such a thing. No matter how hard it was, I would never purposely leave you alone in the world. Then where were you? I looked so hard. Out of state. I went to Charlotte to live with my cousin Joyce. She got me a job with a family. I stayed there 5 years, working as a live-in housekeeper. Why didn't you come back? Because I was afraid. Afraid that you really didn't want to see me. Joyce tried to convince me to look for you, but I thought it would be selfish of me to interfere in your life when you were doing so well. Julian felt a stab in his chest. You were keeping up with my life? Susan smiled through her tears. Always. Joyce had a neighbor here in New York City who would send me newspaper clippings whenever you appeared. When I saw you had opened your first company, I cried with pride for 3 days straight. Why didn't you get in touch then? Because you were a successful businessman and I was a housekeeper. I thought it would be embarrassing for you. Julian shook his head in despair. Mom, I would never be ashamed of you. Never. I know that now. But back then, hurt as I was, I could only see my own inadequacies. The waitress passed by again, and this time Susan ordered a simple coffee. Julian ordered the same, though he had no appetite for anything. When did you return to New York City? 10 years ago. Joyce passed away and I had no one left back in the country. I came back and got a job with a cleaning company. I started downtown, but when I learned you had an office here in the business district, I requested a transfer. You asked to work near me? Susan lowered her eyes, embarrassed. I just wanted the chance to see you sometimes, even if from afar. It was a foolish whim of mine, I know. It wasn't foolish, Mom, it was love. The coffees arrived, but they sat cooling on the table as they kept talking. Mom, you still wear the bracelet I gave you? Susan automatically brought her hand to her wrist, where the cheap jewelry shone under the coffee shop light. I never took it off, not even in the worst times. It was my connection to you. I thought you had thrown it away, along with all the memories of me. I never threw anything away, my son. I've kept all your childhood photos, your school report cards, even that origami frog you made for me on Mother's Day. Julian smiled for the first time. I remember that frog. It was awful. It was beautiful. I kept it in a special little box. They fell silent for a few moments, processing all that had been said. The weight of 20 years of misunderstandings began to dissipate. Mum, I got married. Susan nodded. I know. I read about it in the papers. Catherine, isn't it? She seems like a lovely young woman. She is. Would you like to meet her? Susan's eyes lit up. You think she would like to meet me? I'm sure. In fact, she was the one who encouraged me to look for you. She knew about me? Julian hesitated. I had never told her the details. I always just said my mother was no longer available. She thought you had passed away. Susan understood. And now she is eager to meet her mother-in-law. For the first time since the reunion, Susan smiled widely. Mother-in-law. What a beautiful word. Julian looked at his watch. They had talked for over an hour, and he knew Susan probably needed to get back to work. Mum, do you need to keep working in that building? I do need to work, yes, the bills don't pay themselves. No, I meant you don't need to work anymore. I can... Susan raised her hand, stopping him. Julian, I don't want your charity. If you want to help me, I want it to be because I'm your mother, not because you pity me. It's not pity, Mum, it's love. It's responsibility. It's what I should have been doing for 20 years. Then let's take it slow. First, we need to get to know each other again. Then we'll see about the rest. Julian nodded, understanding the wisdom in his mother's caution. 20 years couldn't be recovered in a 1-hour conversation. Can we see each other again? Tomorrow? I would like that very much, and perhaps your wife could come too? She would love to. They stood up to leave. Outside the coffee house, they finally embraced. It was a long hug, full of longing and forgiveness. Susan was shorter than Julian remembered, or perhaps he had grown more than he thought. Mom, I love you, I always have, even when I was angry. I love you too, my son. More than you can imagine. When they parted, Julian watched her walk back to work. She turned once to wave and he waved back. Then he ran to the coffee shop where Catherine was waiting. How did it go? She stood up anxiously when he entered. "Kath, you have to meet her. Tomorrow, if you want." Catherine smiled and hugged her husband. "Of course I want to. I can't wait to meet the woman who raised the man I love." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night, Julian called Tyler to thank him. "Tyler, thank you for having the courage to tell me about my mother. You changed our lives." The boy's voice was emotional. "You're welcome, Mr. Harrison. My mother was very happy when she heard you had met. I'd like to meet your mother too to thank her in person." "She would be honored, sir." "And Tyler, are you studying?" "Yes, sir. I'm in my second year of high school." "Do you want to go to college?" "I dream of it, but, well, my mother can't afford it." Julian smiled. "We'll talk about that soon, okay?" The next day, Julian, Catherine, and Susan met at the same coffee house. At first, the conversation was a bit tense. Catherine was nervous to make a good impression, and Susan was intimidated by meeting the successful daughter-in-law. But they soon discovered they had a lot in common. They both loved to cook, they both worried about Julian working too much, and they both had a similar sense of humor that made the businessman laugh in ways he had forgotten were possible. "Mrs. Susan," Catherine said at one point, "I've always wanted to know more about Julian's childhood, but he's very private." Susan's eyes lit up. "Oh, I have so many stories. He was such an imaginative child. He was always building things." "Mom, no," Julian protested, but he was smiling. "He made little houses for the neighborhood cats. He said when he grew up, he would build real houses for all the people who had nowhere to live." Catherine looked at her husband affectionately. Some things never change. During the following weeks, the meetings became regular. Julian began picking Susan up from work every Friday to have dinner at his and Catherine's home. Gradually, she shared more details about the years of separation, and he shared his professional triumphs and frustrations. Susan was impressed with her son's apartment in the Upper East Side, but what moved her most was seeing the wedding photos of him and Catherine scattered around the house. "You are a beautiful couple," she said, holding both their hands. "Am I finally going to have the grandchildren I've always dreamed of?" Catherine and Julian exchanged a look. They had been trying to have children for years but hadn't succeeded yet. "We're trying, Mom," Julian said simply. "Then I will pray every day for it to happen soon." 1 month after the reunion, Julian made an important decision. He had researched the cleaning company where Susan worked and discovered the conditions weren't the best. The wages were low and there were no proper benefits. "Mom, I have a proposal to make." They were at his apartment on a Friday night. Catherine had cooked a special slow-roasted brisket, and Susan had brought an apple pie that was Julian's favorite dessert as a child. "What kind of proposal?" "I want you to come work with me." Susan immediately became defensive. "Julian, I already said I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's a real job with a real salary. I need someone to coordinate a special project I'm planning." Catherine knew what her husband was talking about. They had discussed it the night before. "What kind of project?" Susan asked, curious but cautious. "I want to create a social program within the company, offer work and study opportunities for people in vulnerable situations. I need someone who understands these difficulties firsthand to coordinate the program." Susan was silent for a long moment. "Are you sure this isn't just an excuse to help me?" "Mum, during these months talking with you, I realized your life experience is exactly what I need to make this project work. You know what it's like to go through hardships. You know what it's like to fight to survive. You know what really makes a difference in the life of someone in need. I have the money and the structure, but you have the wisdom." Catherine added, "Mrs. Susan, Julian has been talking about this project for weeks. It's really important to him." Susan looked at them both, seeing the sincerity in their eyes. "What if I don't know how to do it? I've never coordinated anything like this. We'll learn together. I'll teach the bureaucratic and business side. You teach the human side." That night, Susan accepted the proposal. 2 weeks later, she quit her job at the cleaning company and started working in Julian's office, in her own room with a view of the city. The project flourished quickly. Susan had a natural intuition for identifying people who truly needed opportunities, and her personal story inspired both the beneficiaries and the company's employees. Tyler was one of the first to benefit. He received a full scholarship to study business administration at a private university, plus a paid internship at the company. His mother, Linda, was hired as Susan's assistant in the social program. "Mr. Julian," Tyler said one day, "thank you for all of this, but mostly for giving me the courage to do what was right. Tyler, you gave us back our family. I'm the one who should be thankful." 6 months after the reunion, Julian made another important decision. He had bought a spacious house in a quiet neighborhood of New York City with a separate guest house. "Mom, I'd like you to live in the guest house of our new home." Susan, who was organizing papers in her office, stopped and looked at him. "Julian, I don't want to interfere with your married life." "You wouldn't interfere. In fact, you'd make our lives richer. Catherine wants this too." "Are you both sure?" "Absolutely. We lost 20 years together, Mum. I don't want to lose another day." Susan accepted, but with one condition: she would pay a symbolic rent to maintain her independence. Julian agreed, understanding the importance of dignity to his mother. The move happened on a sunny Saturday morning. When Julian saw the few boxes with his mother's belongings, he felt a pang in his heart, realizing how simply she had lived all those years. But in one of the boxes he found something that moved him deeply, a scrapbook that Susan had put together over the years, documenting his career from the first company to his most recent successes. Each article was carefully pasted, some with her notes in the margins. "Mom, you kept all of this." "It was my way of being part of your life, even from afar." Catherine, who was helping with the move, was also moved to see the album. "Mrs. Susan, this is beautiful. It's a treasure trove of Julian's history. Now it belongs to both of you, to show my future grandchildren." As if the universe had heard her request, 2 weeks later, Catherine discovered she was pregnant. The joy was universal. Julian cried with happiness. Catherine could barely contain her emotion, and Susan spent the entire day praying in gratitude. "Now our family is truly complete," Julian said, hugging the two most important women in his life. During Catherine's pregnancy, Susan was a fundamental support. She cooked, helped with morning sickness, and shared her experience of having been a mother. Catherine, who had lost her own mother years before, found in Susan the maternal figure that was missing in her life. "Mrs. Susan, do you think I'll be a good mother?" "My dear, you already are a good mother. I see how you care for Julian, how you worry about the people around you. This baby will be very lucky." The birth of little Samuel, a name chosen in honor of the grandfather Julian never knew, was a moment of pure joy. When Susan held her grandson in her arms for the first time, everyone in the maternity ward cried, seeing the new grandmother's emotion. "Hello, my prince," she whispered to the baby. "I'm your Grandma Susan, and I promise I'll always be here for you." Julian watched the scene with a full heart. His mother was there, alive, healthy, holding his son. The family he thought he had lost forever had multiplied. In the months that followed, the family's routine established itself naturally. Susan worked part-time at the social program, dedicating her mornings to helping Catherine with Samuel. Julian reduced his work hours to spend more time at home, discovering the joys of fatherhood that were only possible because he now had true family support. "You know," he said to Catherine one night, as they watched Susan singing to Samuel, "if that day at the office hadn't happened, if Tyler hadn't had the courage—" "It would have happened another way," Catherine interrupted. "True love always finds a way." "You think so?" "I'm sure. You two never stopped loving each other. It was only a matter of time until you found each other again." 1 year after Samuel's birth, Julian organized a special party. Officially, it was to celebrate his grandson's first birthday, but in truth it was to celebrate the family's reunion. Tyler was there, now in his 2nd year of college, brilliant in his studies. Linda, his mother, had become one of the most respected coordinators of the social program. Joyce, the cousin who had taken Susan in out in the country, came especially from Charlotte to meet the boy who became a businessman. "Julian," Joyce said during the party, "your mother talked about you so much that I felt like I already knew you. She never lost faith that one day you would find each other again. Did you try to convince her to look for me? Many times. But she was convinced it would be better for you if she stayed away. I could never make her understand that a child always needs their mother. Julian looked at Susan, who was in the garden playing with Samuel. At least we're together now. And forever, Joyce added. During the party, Julian gave an emotional speech. 2 years ago, I thought I had everything. Professional success, a wonderful wife, financial stability. But there was an emptiness I didn't know how to fill. Today I understand that emptiness was shaped like my mother. The guests applauded, but Julian continued. Tyler, a courageous boy, changed our lives with a simple sentence. He proved that sometimes the truth hurts at first, but sets you free in the end. Linda, thank you for raising a son with the courage to do what's right. Tyler, now a 20-year-old young man, blushed at the praise, but smiled proudly. Mom, Julian addressed Susan directly, forgive the 20 lost years, but I'm thankful for the many years we still have ahead. Susan stood up and hugged her son, as everyone applauded. That night, after the guests had left, the family sat on the porch. Samuel slept in his grandmother's lap. Catherine rested beside her husband, and Julian finally felt complete. You know what moves me the most, Susan said quietly, so as not to wake the baby. What, Mom? To think that Samuel will grow up surrounded by love, never questioning if he's loved or if he has a family. He'll never go through what we went through. Catherine held her mother-in-law's hand. Mrs. Susan, Samuel is lucky to have a grandmother like you, and we are lucky to have you back. No, my dear, I'm the lucky one. I gained not only my son back, but also a daughter and a grandson. My family grew. Julian observed the scene in silence. The business empire he had built, all the million-dollar contracts, all the professional successes, paled in comparison to that simple moment on the home balcony with his family reunited. Kath, he whispered, remember the day I almost signed that Japanese conglomerate contract? How could I forget? If I had signed it, if I hadn't been interrupted, maybe this reunion never would have happened. Or maybe it would have happened differently. What matters is that it did happen. Susan, who was listening to the conversation, smiled. My son, I always knew you were special. Even as a child, you had this ability to turn difficult situations into opportunities for growth. It was like that as a child, it was like that when you became a businessman, and it was like that when you decided to forgive me. Mom, I didn't forgive you. There was never anything to forgive. We just understood each other. I think that's it. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past, but about choosing a better future. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. 2 years passed. The company's social program had expanded and now served over 500 families. Susan had become a respected figure in the business world, often invited to give talks about social responsibility. Catherine was pregnant again, this time with a girl they decided to name Natalie, in honor of the clarity that had finally come to their lives. Samuel, now 3 years old, was a smart and affectionate boy who adored his grandmother. Grandma Susan, he would say, tugging on her dress, tell the story about when Daddy was little. And Susan would tell it always, about the boy who built little houses for cats and dreamed of making real buildings. Samuel listened fascinated, as if he were meeting a superhero. One day, Julian found Samuel playing in the backyard, building a little house with cardboard boxes, exactly as he had done in his childhood. What are you doing, champ? I'm making a house for the neighbor's kitten, Dad. Grandma Susan said you used to do that when you were little. Julian knelt beside his son, helping him with the construction. And why do you want to make a house for the kitten? Because everyone needs a home, Dad. Grandma Susan taught me that. That afternoon, Julian took Samuel to see the company's social program. The boy was impressed to see so many people working and studying. Dad, didn't these people have homes? Some didn't have jobs, others didn't have opportunities, but now they do. And did you give it to them? Julian smiled, remembering his mother's wisdom. Grandma Susan and I gave it together. Alone, I wouldn't have managed. When I grow up, can I help too? Of course you can, son. This will be your company one day, if you want. Samuel nodded seriously. I do want to, and I'll make more little houses, for more kittens and for more people. That night, Julian told the conversation to Susan and Catherine. See how values are passed on, Susan commented. Even without knowing our story, Samuel already understands the importance of helping others. It's not without knowing, Mom. He knows because you teach it every day by example. Catherine, who was sewing little clothes for Natalie, smiled. Our children will grow up knowing that family is the most important thing in the world. And that it's never too late to start over, Susan added. On a September morning, exactly 3 years after the reunion, Tyler showed up at Julian's office. Now a business administration graduate, he had been hired as a junior manager for the social program. Mr. Julian, I have some news. Tell me, Tyler. I'm getting married, and I'd like to invite you and Mrs. Susan to be our sponsors. Julian was moved. Tyler had become almost a member of the family, and being asked as a sponsor was an honor. Of course we accept. Who's the lucky woman? Megan, one of the girls from the program. She was a cleaner, managed to study through the scholarships you offer, and graduated in education. She now works in early childhood education. What a beautiful story, Tyler. You two are proof that the program works. We're proof that believing in people works, Mr. Julian. The wedding of Tyler and Megan was held at the community church where they grew up. It was a simple ceremony but full of meaning. Julian and Susan, as sponsors, were moved to see those two young people starting a new life together. During the reception, Linda, Tyler's mother, approached Susan. Mrs. Susan, thank you for taking my son back into your family. Linda, you didn't join our family. We became one family. That's true. And to think it all started because Tyler couldn't stand by and watch you suffer. That boy changed our lives. Now he's a good man, married, with a bright future ahead. All thanks to Mr. Julian and you. Susan shook her head. No, Linda, all thanks to love. The love I always had for Julian, the love he always had for me, the love Tyler has for the truth, the love you have for your son. Love always finds a way. During the reception, Julian gave another speech. Tyler, 3 years ago you came into my life like a hurricane, turning everything upside down. Today you get married and start your own family, taking with you the values you've always had. Courage, honesty, and a love for the truth. Tyler smiled, hugging his new wife. Megan, Julian continued, welcome to our extended family. May you be as happy as we are today. After the reception, as they were driving home, Samuel asked from his car seat, Daddy, why were you crying when you talked to Uncle Tyler? Julian looked at his son in the rearview mirror. Because sometimes happiness is so big it comes out through your eyes, son. Oh. Samuel thought for a moment. So you were happy crying? Exactly. Was Grandma Susan happy crying too? Yes, champ. Then it's okay. When I grow up, I'll happy cry too. Catherine and Julian laughed, and Susan, who was in the passenger seat holding Natalie, smiled through her own tears of happiness. 4 years after the reunion, the Harrison family was completely settled. The social program served over 1,000 families. Samuel was in preschool and already showing signs of the same entrepreneurial intelligence as his father, and Natalie, now 1 year old, was a cheerful child who especially adored her grandmother. Julian had been invited to give a lecture at a university on corporate social responsibility. It was the first time he would speak publicly about the family's story. Good afternoon. My name is Julian Harrison, and today I want to tell you a story about second chances. The audience of university students paid attention, but Julian knew the best was yet to come. 4 years ago, I was a successful businessman, but emotionally empty. I had built an empire based on the belief that I didn't need anyone. I was wrong. He told the whole story, the reunion with his mother, the misunderstanding that lasted 2 decades, Tyler's courage, the family's transformation. Today, our company employs over 5,000 people, but the social program my mother coordinates is what makes me most proud. because it was born from love, grew with purpose, and is fueled by the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. A student raised his hand. Mr. Julian, what was the most difficult moment in this whole process? Julian thought for a moment. It was realizing that I had wasted 20 years because of pride, that I could have had my mother by my side through all my achievements if I'd had the courage to look for her properly. Another student asked, and the most rewarding moment? When I held my son for the first time, and my mother was right there beside me. That's when I understood that family isn't just about the past or the future. It's about the present. It's about being together now. After the talk, several students came up to ask personal questions. One young woman in particular caught Julian's attention. Mr. Julian, I have a situation similar to yours. I haven't spoken to my mother in 5 years because of a fight. How can I be sure she'll forgive me? Julian smiled warmly. You can't be sure, but you can have hope, and sometimes hope is enough to take the first step. What if she rejects me? Then at least you tried, but in my experience, a mother's love is stronger than any hurt. The young woman thanked him with tears in her eyes and promised to call her mother that very week. When Julian arrived home that night, he found Susan in the kitchen preparing dinner, with Natalie in the stroller beside her and Samuel helping to set the table. How was the talk, son? Emotional, Mum. I told our story to 200 college students. And did they like it? They loved it. One girl even said she's going to call her mother because of our story. Susan smiled. That's good. If our experience can help other families reunite, then all the pain was worth it. Catherine arrived from work. She had gone back to working part-time as an architect, and the family sat down to dinner. It was a simple scene, but it represented everything Julian had unknowingly dreamed of for years. Dad, Samuel said while eating, my teacher asked me to make a family tree of our family. Oh yeah? And how will it be? It will have you, Mum, me, Natalie, Grandma Susan, Uncle Tyler, Aunt Megan. Samuel counted on his little fingers. Our family is big, huh, Dad? Yes, son, and it's going to grow even more. How? Catherine and Julian exchanged a knowing look. They had decided the previous week to try for another child. Well, you might get a little brother or sister soon, Samuel clapped excitedly. Really? Is Grandma Susan going to have another grandbaby? Susan, who was feeding Natalie, smiled. God willing, yes. Then I'll start making a little house for the baby too. Everyone laughed at the boy's excitement. That night, after the children went to sleep, Julian, Catherine, and Susan sat in the living room to talk. Mom, I was thinking about something, Julian began. Speak, son. Would you like to write a book about your story? About our story? Susan looked surprised. A book? Who would want to read the story of a cleaning lady? Everyone would want to read the story of a mother who never gave up on her son, and of a son who learned that true success lies in family. Catherine agreed. Mrs. Susan, your story is inspiring. It could help many people. I don't even know how to write properly. I'll help, Julian said, or we can hire someone to help. The important thing is that the story gets told. Susan was thoughtful for a few moments. You know what? I think yes. If our story can touch other people the way it touched that girl at the university today, then it's worth it. Then it's decided. We'll write the Harrison family book. Catherine hugged them both. Our family is going to be famous. Our family is already famous, Julian corrected. It's famous for being united. 6 months later, Julian received an unexpected call. It was from the young woman who had spoken to him after the lecture at the university. Mr. Julian, this is Amanda from the university, remember me? Of course, Amanda, how are you? Did you manage to speak with your mother? Her voice was emotional. I did, and Mr. Julian, thank you. My mother had been waiting for my call for 5 years. She never stopped loving me. That's wonderful, Amanda. How was the reunion? Difficult at first, but now we talk every day. She's coming to visit me next week. I'm so happy for you, Amanda. Mr. Julian, can I ask a favor? When you give your next lecture, can you tell our story too? To encourage other people? Julian smiled. Absolutely. And Amanda, Thank you for having the courage to take the first step." When he hung up, Julian told the conversation to Susan, who was organizing photos for the book being written. "See, Mum? Our story is already helping other families. It's a great responsibility, Julian. We have to live up to what we preach. And we do, Mom. Every day." Susan held an old photo of Julian as a child. "You know what moves me the most in all of this?" "What?" "Thinking that the little boy in that photo became the wonderful man he is today, and that now has children of his own to love." Julian kissed his mother's forehead. "And thinking that the brave woman who raised that boy is here seeing all this happen. I am blessed, my son. We all are, Mom. We all are." The book, Second Chances, A Story of Love and Forgiveness, was launched a year later, with great impact. It became a bestseller, and Julian and Susan were invited to television shows, radio programs, and lectures across the country. But what moved them the most were the letters they received from readers who were inspired by the story to seek their own family reconciliations. "Dear Julian and Mrs. Susan," one letter said, "after reading your book, I found the courage to look for my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in 10 years. Yesterday she introduced me to my grandchildren. Thank you for showing me it's never too late for love." Another letter said, "I am a businessman like Julian, and I always put work first. After reading your story, I decided to change. Now I work less and love more. My family thanks you." On a special afternoon, exactly 5 years after the reunion, Julian organized a different party. He invited all the families helped by the social program, all the company employees, Tyler, Megan, and several people who had been inspired by the family's story to seek their own reconciliations. "Today marks 5 years since a brave boy changed our lives," Julian said in the opening speech. "Tyler, where are you?" Tyler, now the father of a 6-month-old baby, stood up in the middle of the audience. "Tyler, you didn't just reunite a family. You started a chain of love that has already touched hundreds of other families. Thank you." The audience gave a standing ovation. "Mom," Julian addressed Susan, who was sitting in the front row holding Natalie, now a clever 2-year-old girl. "Thank you for waiting. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for teaching me that love is stronger than pride." Susan stood up and hugged her son on stage, while the entire audience was moved. "And now," Julian announced, "I have a special surprise." Catherine came on stage carrying a small baby in her arms. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Andrew Harrison, our 3rd child, who was born last week." The joy was universal. Tyler ran to the stage to meet the baby, followed by Linda and several other people. Samuel and Natalie, now 6 and 2 years old respectively, were proud of their little brother. "Grandma Susan," Samuel asked, "is our family complete now?" Susan looked around, seeing all those dear people gathered, seeing her 3 healthy grandchildren, seeing her accomplished son beside his beloved wife. "You know, Samuel, I think our family will never be complete. It will keep growing, including more people who need love. That's how it should be." "So will we need a bigger house?" Julian laughed. "Maybe so, champ. Maybe so." That night, after everyone had left, the family gathered at home for an intimate dinner. It was just the 6 of them: Julian, Catherine, Susan, Samuel, Natalie, and little Andrew. "You know," Julian said as he cut the leftover cake from the party, 5 years ago, I thought success meant having a lot of money and being admired by others." "And now?" Catherine asked, rocking Andrew. "Now I know success is being here with you, watching my children grow up with their grandmother nearby, knowing our story can inspire other people to seek love." Susan, who was helping Natalie eat her cake, smiled. "My son, you were always successful. You just didn't know it because you were measuring success with the wrong ruler." "That's true, Mom. The right ruler is love." Samuel, who was paying attention to the adults' conversation, asked a question. "Dad, when I grow up, will I have to lose you and then find you again?" The question took everyone by surprise. Julian knelt to his son's level. "No, Samuel, you will never lose us, and we will never lose you. Because now we know the most important thing is being together every day. Even when I get big and live in a house by myself, even then. Because family isn't about living in the same house, son. It's about carrying the people we love always in our hearts. Like Grandma Susan carried you. Exactly like Grandma Susan carried me. Samuel nodded, satisfied with the answer, and went back to eating his cake. That night, after the children went to sleep, Julian and Catherine were on the porch with Susan, who was feeding Andrew a bottle. "Mum," Julian said, "can I ask a question I've never asked?" "Of course, son." "In all those years of separation, did you ever think about starting a new family, getting married again?" Susan smiled softly. "There were offers, yes, but my heart was already occupied. I had a son in the world, even if far away. That completed me." Catherine was moved. "Mrs. Susan, that's beautiful." "It's not beautiful, my dear. It's just what it is to be a mother. A mother's love doesn't have an expiration date." Julian held his mother's hand. "Mom, I promise you one thing." "What, son?" "Samuel, Natalie, and Andrew will never leave home without knowing how much they are loved. And if they ever leave angry, like I did, I will go after them the same day. I won't wait 20 years to clear up misunderstandings." "That is all a grandmother could want to hear," Susan said, kissing the forehead of the grandson sleeping in her arms. 2 years passed. Julian's company had become a national model for social responsibility. The program, coordinated by Susan, served more than 3,000 families and had been replicated by other companies in various states. Samuel, now 8 years old, had become a minor celebrity at school because of the family's book. Natalie, at 4, showed signs of having inherited her grandmother's emotional intelligence. Andrew, at 2, was a cheerful boy who loved building towers with blocks, a passion Julian recognized from his own childhood. On a Sunday afternoon, the family was gathered in the backyard when Samuel made an important announcement. "Dad, Mum, Grandma Susan, I've decided what I want to be when I grow up." "Oh yeah?" Julian said, feigning suspense. "And what do you want to be?" "I want to be a family reuniter." Everyone laughed at the expression invented by the boy. "A family reuniter," Catherine repeated. "And what does a family reuniter do?" "Helps people who are fighting to make peace, like Uncle Tyler did with you," Samuel explained seriously. Susan got emotional. "Samuel, that is a very beautiful profession." "It's not really a profession," Natalie interfered with her 4-year-old logic. "It's more like a superpower." "Natalie is right," Julian agreed. "It really is a superpower. And you know what else? You're already training for it." "How so, Dad?" "Every time you help someone at school, every time you are kind to people, you are training to be a family reuniter." Samuel felt proud with the idea of already training for his future profession. That night, when he was putting Samuel to sleep, Julian had a special conversation with his son. "Samuel, can I tell you a secret?" "You can, Dad." "Uncle Tyler wasn't the first family reuniter in our story." "He wasn't? Who was then?" "Grandma Susan. She spent 20 years reuniting our family in her heart, keeping my love even from afar, waiting for the right time for us to be together again." Samuel thought for a few moments. "So Grandma Susan is a superhero." "The greatest superhero I know." "I'll tell her tomorrow." "You can tell her. She'll be happy." The next day, Samuel woke up early and ran to the annex where Susan lived. He found her in the small kitchen, preparing breakfast for the whole family, a ritual she had adopted and which had become one of the most special moments of the day. "Grandma Susan, Daddy told me you are a superhero," Susan laughed, hugging her grandson. "Oh, really? And what's my superpower?" "Reuniting families. Daddy said you spent 20 years reuniting him with you in your heart." Susan's eyes filled with tears. "You know, Samuel, your father is right. But it wasn't a superpower, it was love." "So love is a superpower." "The greatest of all, my prince." Natalie, who had arrived in the kitchen holding Andrew by the hand, heard the conversation. "Grandma Susan, so I have superpower too?" "Of course you do, my princess, all 3 of you do. And Andrew too. Especially Andrew. He is small, but his love is giant." Andrew, who still didn't speak very well, babbled something that sounded like "Gama," and stretched his little arms toward Susan. She picked him up and the four of them headed to the main house where Julian and Catherine were getting ready for the day. "Good morning, family," Julian said upon seeing them arrive. "How are our superheroes today?" "Dad," Samuel said seriously, "Grandma Susan said that everyone has the superpower of love." "And she is right. Have you used your superpower today?" "Not yet, I just woke up." "Then how about using it now, by giving Mommy a hug?" The children ran to hug Catherine, who was preparing the school snacks. Susan watched the scene with a smile on her face, still holding Andrew. "Julian," she called softly, "thank you." "For what, Mom?" "For giving me the chance to see all this, for forgiving me, for including me in my grandchildren's lives. Mom, you don't have to thank someone for having the right to your own family's love." That afternoon, while Julian was at the office, he received a special call. It was from the city's mayor. "Julian, I have a proposal to make. The city wants to create an annual award for people who promote family reunification and social responsibility. We would like to call it the Susan Harrison Award." Julian was moved. "It's an honor, Mr. Mayor, but I need to talk to my mother first." Of course. And Julian, the first awardee, would be her herself, obviously. When Julian got home and told the news to the family, Susan was speechless. "An award with my name? But I'm just an extraordinary woman who changed hundreds of lives," Catherine completed. "Mom," Julian said, "you deserve this recognition. Your story has inspired not just our family, but so many others." Samuel, who was listening, clapped. "Grandma Susan is going to be famous." "She already is famous, son. Famous for being the best grandma in the world." The award ceremony took place 3 months later at the city's municipal theatre. Susan, wearing an elegant blue suit that Catherine had chosen for her, was visibly nervous. "Mom, you're going to do great," Julian reassured her backstage. "It's just that I've never spoken to so many people before, son. Just tell our story, the way you always tell it to the children." When Susan took the stage to receive the honor and give a speech, the whole family was in the front row. Julian, Catherine, their 3 children, Tyler, Megan with her 2 kids, Linda, and dozens of families helped by the social program. "Good evening," Susan began, her voice slightly trembling. "My name is Susan Harrison, and 7 years ago I was just a cleaner who mopped offices at night." The audience fell completely silent. "Today I am here because I believe love never gives up. For 20 years, my son and I lived apart because of a misunderstanding. I thought he would be better off without me. He thought I had abandoned him." She told the whole story, from the separation to the reunion, including Tyler's courage and the family's transformation. "I learned that family isn't about perfection. It's about forgiveness. It's about second chances. It's about choosing to stay together even when it's hard." The audience was visibly moved. "This award isn't mine. It belongs to all the mothers who never give up on their children, to all the children who have the courage to ask for forgiveness, to all the people who believe that love can bring together what pain has torn apart." When Susan finished, the audience rose for a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Julian was crying, Catherine was too, and Samuel whispered to Natalie, "Our grandma really is a superhero." After the ceremony, there was a cocktail reception where many people approached Susan to share their own stories of family reconciliation. "Mrs. Susan," said an elderly lady, "I read your book and found the courage to look for my sister, whom I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. Last week we were co-godmothers together at our nephew's wedding." "What a joy," Susan replied. "That is the real prize." A young man approached next. "Mrs. Susan, I was addicted to drugs, and my family had given up on me. When I heard your talk on the radio, I realized my mother had never truly given up. I sought help, got clean, and today I've been sober for 2 years. I went back home last week." Susan held the young man's hands. "My son, may God always bless you. Your mother must be so proud." "She is." And she sent a message. "Thank you for showing that a mother never gives up." That night, as the family was driving home, Julian made a comment that would be remembered forever. "Mom, today you touched hundreds of people with your story." "It wasn't my story, son. It was our story. a story that's only beautiful because it has a happy ending. Catherine, who was driving, looked in the rearview mirror. Mrs. Susan, I think our story is just beginning. What do you mean, my dear? Because now we know that the love you have can inspire other people. It's a responsibility, but it's also a gift. Samuel, who was half asleep, murmured from his car seat, "Grandma Susan, tomorrow can you teach me how to be a love superhero?" "Of course, my prince. First lesson, always say I love you before bed." "I love you, Grandma Susan." "I love you too, Samuel. I love you all more than anything in the world." 2 years later, the Susan Harrison Award had already become one of the most respected honors in the country. Families from all over Brazil sent in their stories of reconciliation, and the winners were chosen by a committee that included Susan, Julian, and several personalities from the social sector. Julian's company had grown even more, but paradoxically, he worked fewer hours. He had learned that being present for his family was more important than any contract. Samuel, now 10 years old, was already showing signs that he would indeed be a family reuniter when he grew up. At school, he was always chosen to mediate conflicts between classmates and had a natural talent for helping people understand each other. Natalie, at 6 years old, had inherited the practical side of Catherine and the emotional side of Susan. She was a girl who could solve complex problems with simple solutions. Andrew, now 4 years old, was a perfect mix of everyone. He had his father's determination, his mother's sensitivity, his grandmother's wisdom, and his own affectionate and cheerful personality. One special Sunday morning, the family was gathered in the backyard when Andrew asked a question that surprised everyone. "Grandma Susan, why were you and Dad apart for so long without seeing each other?" It was the first time the youngest had shown curiosity about the family history. Susan picked him up and thought about how to explain it simply. "You know, Andrew, sometimes people who love each other fight and get upset. When that happens, they need time to understand that love is more important than the fight." "But you never stopped loving each other?" "Never. Not for a single day." "Then why did it take you so long to make peace?" Julian approached. "Andrew, sometimes when we're hurt, we're afraid of getting hurt even more. I was afraid to look for Grandma and find out she really didn't want me anymore." "And what was Grandma Susan afraid of?" Susan smiled. "I was afraid of disrupting your dad's life. I thought he would be happier without me." "But you were wrong." "Very wrong," Julian agreed. "That's why in our family today, when someone gets upset, we talk about it right away. We don't let the upset feelings grow." Andrew nodded seriously. "Like when Natalie and I fight over a toy." "Exactly. You fight, make up quickly, and keep playing together." Samuel, who was listening to the conversation, came closer. "Andrew, do you want to know how Uncle Tyler reunited Grandma and Dad?" "Yes," Samuel told the whole story, from the day Tyler walked into the boardroom to the reunion at the coffee house. Andrew listened, fascinated, asking questions and making comments. "Uncle Tyler was very brave," Andrew said at the end. "Yes, he was," Natalie agreed. "That's why he's Samuel's godfather." "And when I grow up, can I be brave like Uncle Tyler?" "You already are brave, Andrew," Susan said, kissing her grandson's forehead. "Every day you are brave when you say I love you to everyone." "So am I already a family reuniter?" Julian laughed. "You are our official family reuniter, champ." That afternoon, Tyler and Megan came for lunch with their 3 children. Besides the first, they had had twins the previous year. The house was full of laughter and conversation, as always happened when the extended family got together. "Tyler," Julian said during lunch, "did you know Andrew has decided to follow in your footsteps?" "How so?" "He wants to be a family reuniter when he grows up, just like you were for us." Tyler was moved. "What an honor, Andrew. We'll be a team." Andrew clapped his hands with joy. "Can you teach me?" "Of course." "First lesson, always tell the truth, even when it's hard." "And the second lesson?" Andrew asked, curious. "Believe in love. Always." Susan, who was serving dessert, stopped to watch the scene. Her table was full of beloved people, her successful and accomplished son, her dear daughter-in-law who had become a daughter of her heart, her 3 wonderful grandchildren, Tyler and Megan, who were like adoptive children, and the borrowed little grandchildren who completed the joy. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" Julian asked, noticing her contemplative gaze. "I'm thinking that if I knew this was the reward for patience, I would have waited 40 years if necessary." Catherine held her mother-in-law's hand. "Mrs. Susan, you didn't wait just 20 years. You built this happiness every day with your unwavering love. We built it together, my dear. Each did their part." Tyler raised his glass of juice. "A toast to the Harrison family, who taught me that family isn't just blood, it's a choice." "A toast to Uncle Tyler," Samuel replied, "who had the courage to do the right thing." "A toast to Grandma Susan," Natalie added, "the superhero of love." "A toast to Dad," Andrew said, "who learned to apologize." "A toast to Mom," Samuel continued, "who helped everyone understand each other." Everyone laughed and toasted, amid the joyful noise of children and overlapping conversations. That night, after Tyler and his family had left, Julian found Susan in the kitchen, washing the dinner dishes. "Mom, leave that. Catherine will wash them tomorrow." "It doesn't bother me, son. I like to leave everything organized." Julian picked up a towel and began drying the dishes. It was a rare moment of intimacy between them, without the children or Catherine around. "Mom, can I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "Do you regret anything in our story?" Susan stopped washing and looked at her son. "I regret taking so long to teach you that you were loved unconditionally. If I had been clearer about that when you were a teenager, maybe the fight would never have happened. And I regret being an ungrateful son and saying those terrible things. Julian, you were just a scared boy." "No, Mom. I was old enough to know that words hurt, and I chose words I knew would hurt deeply." Susan dried her hands and turned to her son. "My son, do you want to know a secret?" "I do. Those words didn't hurt me because they were cruel. They hurt me because they came from you. If they had been said by a stranger, I wouldn't have cared. But they came from the boy I loved more than anything in the world. That doesn't make what I did any better, no, but it makes it human. And Julian, if you hadn't done that, maybe we would never have learned the value of forgiveness." Julian hugged his mother. "I love you, Mom. Not a day goes by that I'm not thankful to have you back. And I love you too, my son. More today than yesterday, and less than I will love you tomorrow." The next morning, Julian woke up with a special idea. It was Monday, and normally everyone would be getting ready for work and school, but he decided to do something different. "Everyone," he announced during breakfast, "no one is going to work or school today. We're taking a family outing." "Really, Dad?" Samuel asked, excited. "Really. Mom, call the children's school. Catherine, cancel your appointments. Today is the official Harrison Family Day." "But Julian," Catherine protested, "you have that important meeting." "The meeting can wait. Family can't." Susan smiled, remembering how her son used to prioritize work above all else. "Where are we going?" "We're going to visit the places of our story, the building where Mom worked, the coffee house where we reunited, the church where Tyler and Megan got married. Let's show the children the settings of our reconciliation." The idea excited the whole family. They spent the day visiting the significant locations of the family history, telling the children the details of each important moment. At the building where Susan worked as a cleaner, the doorman still recognized her. "Mrs. Susan, how are you? I heard you've become a businesswoman." "I didn't become a businesswoman, Mr. Peterson. I just found my place in life." Samuel was impressed seeing the 20th floor where his grandmother used to clean windows. "Grandma Susan, weren't you afraid of being so high up?" "No, my prince. When you have a purpose, you're not afraid." "And what was your purpose?" "To survive until I found you all again." At the coffee house where the reunion took place, the same waitress who had served them years before still worked there. "Mrs. Susan, Mr. Julian, what a joy to see you, and what a beautiful family." They sat at the same table from their first meeting. Julian told the children how nervous and emotional it had been. "Dad, did you cry?" Andrew asked. "I cried a lot, son." "Why?" "Because sometimes happiness is so big it doesn't fit only in the heart, so it comes out through the eyes." Natalie, always practical, commented, "Just like when I get really happy on my birthday." Exactly like that, Princess. At the church where Tyler and Megan got married, the priest was still there. He remembered the family and was happy to see them. "How is our exemplary godfather?" he asked Julian. "Very well, Father, and very grateful for everything." "And Mrs. Susan, I heard you won an important award." "I won much more than an award, Father. I won my family back." The priest smiled. "God never gives up on his children, Mrs. Susan. Sometimes it takes a while, but love always finds a way." At the end of the day, as they were heading home, Samuel made an observation that touched everyone deeply. "Dad, our story seems like a book, doesn't it?" "Why do you think that, son?" "Because it has a sad beginning, a complicated middle and a happy ending, just like in the books Grandma Susan reads to us." Julian and Catherine exchanged an emotional look. "And you know what else?" Natalie added. "Our story isn't over yet. We're still writing it." "That's right, Princess. And what a beautiful story we're writing together." Andrew, who was dozing in the back seat, woke up and murmured, "When I grow up, I'll tell our story to my children." "Yes, you will, champ," Susan said, stroking her grandson's hair. "And they will tell it to their children. That way our story will never end." That night, while putting the children to bed, Samuel had one last question. "Dad, if Uncle Tyler hadn't shown up, would you and Grandma Susan have found each other anyway?" Julian thought for a moment. "You know, Samuel, I believe yes. One way or another, love would have found a way." "How do you know?" "Because true love is like that. It never gives up." After the children fell asleep, Julian, Catherine, and Susan sat on the porch, as was their custom on special nights. "It was a beautiful day," Catherine remarked. "It was," Susan agreed. "Reviewing our story made me realize how much we've all grown. Mom, when I look back, I'm amazed at how every difficult thing we went through brought us here. That's how it is, son. God writes straight with crooked lines. And now? What does the future hold for us?" Susan smiled, looking at the city lights. "More love, more family, more beautiful stories to tell. And more responsibility," Catherine added. "Our story inspires many people. We must continue to be worthy of that trust." "As long as we truly love each other, we will be," Julian said with conviction. "And we will love always," Susan finished. "Forever." In the early hours of that special Monday, while everyone slept peacefully, Julian woke up and went to the window. He looked at the annex where his mother lived, seeing a light still on. She was probably reading or organizing photos. For a moment he was overcome by a feeling of gratitude so deep he could hardly breathe. 7 years earlier, he was a man financially successful, but emotionally empty. Today he was a complete man, father of 3 wonderful children, husband to an extraordinary woman, a son reunited with a mother who never gave up. His company thrived not just from profits, but from the social impact it created. His marriage was stronger than ever, fortified by the challenges they had overcome together. His children were growing up surrounded by love and solid values. But above all, he had learned the greatest lesson of his life. True success is not measured by what one achieves, but by how many people one loves, and how many people love us back. Tyler had entered his life like a hurricane, turning everything upside down. But that hurricane had rearranged the pieces in a much better way than they were before. Julian smiled to himself and returned to bed, where Catherine slept peacefully. He gently kissed his wife's forehead and whispered, "Thank you for helping me find my family. I love you." Catherine murmured something inaudible in response, and Julian lay down, finally at complete peace with himself and his life. 2 blocks away, Tyler also woke in the middle of the night. He was checking on the twins when he remembered that afternoon, 7 years ago, when he decided to tell a stranger about his mother who was a cleaner. Back then, he was just a 15-year-old boy who could no longer bear to see a woman suffering in silence. He never imagined that impulsive decision would change so many lives so profoundly. Now he was a married man, a father, a successful professional, and a godfather to a family he considered his own. All because one day he decided that truth was more important than convenience. He looked at Megan sleeping beside him and at their 3 small children in their cribs. His family existed because he had the courage to do what was right, even when it was hard. He whispered a prayer of gratitude and went back to sleep, knowing that the next day would bring more opportunities to make a difference in other people's lives. In her simple apartment, Linda also reflected on how her life had changed. From a cleaner worried about her son's future, she had become the coordinator of a social program respected nationally. But more than that, she had gained an extended family that welcomed her as if she had always been a part of it. Susan Harrison had become more than a co-worker. She was a sister at heart, someone who understood her struggles and shared her victories. Tyler had graduated from university and built a solid career. Now she could sleep peacefully, knowing she had given her son not just an education, but also values that made him a good man. In the annex of the Harrison house, Susan was awake, flipping through a family photo album. There were pictures from all the important moments of the last 7 years, the first Christmas together, the children's birthdays, Tyler's wedding, the birth of each grandchild. But the photo that moved her the most was a simple one. Julian holding newborn Samuel, with her and Catherine by their side. It was the first official photo of the complete family taken at the hospital. She had worked her whole life as a cleaner, cleaning up other people's dreams. She never imagined her own dreams could be realized so grandly. Now she coordinated a program that changed lives, lived in a beautiful house next to her son, helped raise 3 wonderful grandchildren, and had a daughter-in-law who treated her like a mother. More than that, her story had become a source of inspiration for thousands of people. She received weekly letters from families who had reconciled after reading the book or hearing one of her talks. "Thank you, my God," she whispered, closing the album. "Thank you for turning my pain into purpose." She turned off the light and lay down, knowing that the next day she would have another opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. In the main house, Catherine had also woken and noticed her husband's temporary absence. When he returned to bed, she whispered, "Can't sleep." "I did sleep, I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how blessed we are, about how special our family is." Catherine nestled closer to him. "It's special because it was built with a lot of love and a lot of struggle. And because we had brave people like Tyler and you, who pushed me in the right direction when I was lost." "You weren't lost, Julian. You were just scared of getting hurt again. And you taught me that it's worth the risk of getting hurt when you truly love." They lay in silence for a few minutes, listening to the quiet breathing of their children in the neighboring rooms. "Kath," Julian whispered, "do you think Samuel will really be a family uniter when he grows up?" "I think he already is. All our children are. They're growing up knowing that family is sacred." "And Natalie, what do you think she'll be?" "Someone who will change the world, one way or another. She has her grandmother's determination and her father's intelligence." "And Andrew?" Catherine smiled in the dark. "Andrew will be the heart of the family, like Mrs. Susan is today. He'll be the point of unity for all of us. A family of love superheroes, as they say. The best definition I've ever heard. They fell asleep embraced, surrounded by the love they had built, and the certainty that, whatever happened in the future, they would always have each other." End of story. Dear listener, our journey with the Harrison family has come to an end, but the message remains. It's never too late for love to overcome pride. Tell us in the comments if you've ever experienced a family reconciliation or if our story inspired you to reach out to a loved one. Where are you listening from? Share your experience with us. Thank you for your company in this moving narrative. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that touch the heart.